Parliament didn't just get heated, it snapped in real time. Keir Starmer stood up expecting questions about cost of living. He walked straight into a political detonation instead, and when the Speaker had to interrupt mid-exchange, everyone already knew it had gone too far. A rural MP puts the pressure on first: petrol prices, families struggling, daily survival in the countryside. But the response doesn't stay there. It shifts hard into war, into Iran, into foreign conflict and strategic justification. And that's when it turns, because what comes next isn't an answer, it's an accusation, a screeching U-turn, a direct hit on leadership consistency, a warning that decisions at this level don't get second chances. The chamber starts boiling, voices overlap, the Speaker steps in, order, but the damage is already done. And then comes the final escalation. Hypotheticals about war, leadership, and what would have happened under different hands on power. This wasn't a debate anymore. This was Parliament losing control in real time.
And she would be coming back to Parliament a week later to say, "Oh, sorry, I got that one wrong."
Order.
What's your take on this debate? Drop your opinion in the comments below, and let's see where the real public stands on this issue.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but unfortunately, we've got to stick to Prime Minister's questions.
HMS Dragon would have left a week ago.
Mr. Speaker steps in to restore order, but by that point, the chamber is already deep into a political confrontation that has moved far beyond the original question. It begins with what sounds like a routine challenge on the cost of living, but the framing is anything but routine. Rural communities are placed at the center of the argument, not as a background detail, but as the entire foundation of the criticism. Families are described as dependent on their cars for everything: school runs, shopping, visiting elderly relatives, and that dependency becomes the pressure point. The rising cost of petrol is not treated as an abstract economic issue, but as the single most immediate burden crushing household budgets. The question that follows is direct and pointed. Does the Prime Minister actually understand this reality, or is he disconnected from it entirely? Instead of staying within that domestic frame, the response shifts sharply into international affairs. References to broader conflict in Iran and coordination with allies suddenly dominate the explanation. The tone changes from household economics to geopolitical management, and that transition itself becomes the trigger for escalation. Because in that moment, the original concern, everyday financial pressure, is no longer being directly addressed in the same terms. That opening creates space for a much more aggressive political charge to land. The accusation of a screeching U-turn reframes the issue from policy discussion into inconsistency under pressure. What was once a question about cost of living is now tied to foreign policy credibility and decision-making reliability at the highest level. The implication being pushed is not just disagreement, but instability in judgment when dealing with matters of war and international conflict. From there, the argument escalates further. Leadership is placed under a harsher lens, with the suggestion that decisions involving war are not reversible or flexible once made. The tone becomes more absolute, turning political disagreement into a question of responsibility and consequences. It is no longer about whether a policy is correct or incorrect, but whether leadership can be trusted to make such decisions at all, without contradiction or reversal. The intensity in the chamber rises as the exchange continues, and that is when procedural control becomes necessary. The Speaker interrupts, calling for order and reminding members of the limits of the exchange. That intervention itself becomes part of the moment, because it signals that the debate has moved beyond structured questioning into open confrontation where control is slipping. But even with that interruption, the political tension does not fully settle. Further claims are made about hypothetical leadership decisions and military action, pushing the argument into even more serious territory. The suggestion that different leadership would have resulted in immediate military deployment raises the stakes again, shifting the discussion from domestic policy failure to questions of national security and global escalation. What makes the exchange stand out is how quickly it transforms. A question rooted in fuel prices and rural hardship becomes a layered confrontation involving war policy, leadership credibility, and decision-making under crisis. Each response builds on the last, not reducing tension, but amplifying it, until the Speaker is forced to intervene just to keep the session within parliamentary structure. In the end, what remains is not a resolved argument, but a chamber visibly pulled in different directions. One side pressing the cost of living crisis as a daily reality for citizens, the other expanding the debate into international conflict and strategic decisions. And between those two positions sits the Speaker's intervention, a reminder that even in the most heated political exchanges, order is the only thing preventing complete breakdown of debate.